All right, listener. Ever feel like you're drowning in information overload?
Totally. It's like a constant fire hose these days.
Right. Well, today we're diving deep, and this one's as insightful as it is entertaining, trust me. We're breaking down this Joe Rogan Experience interview with the one and only Quinton Rampage Jackson.
Well, this is a good one.
And get this, we're not just talking about his knockout reel, though that's definitely a thing.
Of course.
This is about Rampage's life philosophies, his views on health, culture, even some of those conspiracy theories he's known for.
It's true. You think you know Rampage, the fighter, the personality.
Right.
But this interview, it reveals a whole other side.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. What's the vibe here?
Well, this is a guy who kicks off the interview by asking Joe Rogan if he can Google Dick Hard Soda. I mean, come on, classic Rampage.
Well, I love it.
But then, just like that, he completely shifts gears, starts talking about gifting his son a valuable samurai helmet.
Oh, wait, really?
Dead serious. And it's not just a throwaway story. He goes deep on the meaning behind it, the history. You see this whole other side of him, the dedicated father.
It's those little glimpses into the real person, you know?
Exactly. And that's what makes this interview so compelling.
Okay, so we've got Dick Hard Soda, we've got samurai helmets. Where do we go from there?
Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. He goes on to talk about his time living and fighting in Japan, and man, does he have stories.
Yeah, he lived there for years, right? This isn't just some tourist's perspective.
No way. He was immersed in the culture.
Huh.
He talks about the people, how unbelievably polite and orderly they are. And then he drops this hilarious anecdote about seeing a guy crash his bike into a truck, and nobody even reacts.
You're kidding.
Swear to you. It's like their cultural response is the complete opposite of what we'd expect here. You know.
It's fascinating how that stuff works. Different cultures, different worlds. Okay, so he's talking about Japan. What else?
So he gets into this whole thing about Japan's declining birth rate, which is a big deal over there.
Huge issue.
And he starts talking about potentially having more kids there himself.
Wait, seriously?
I'm telling you, this guy keeps you on your toes. 1 minute it's jokes, the next he's pondering global issues, and just when you think you've got him figured out, he hits you with this bombshell story about a spiritual awakening that totally changed his outlook on life.
Okay, now that's a story we need to hear, but we're going to make you wait for it. So we've gone from Dick Hard Soda to samurai helmets to Japan's population, then out of nowhere, this spiritual awakening thing. Where did that come from?
Right. Talk about a curveball.
Yeah.
1 minute he's telling stories about cultural quirks in Japan. The next he's describing this crazy vivid dream he had about God and the devil.
No way.
Seriously. And he wakes up, terrified obviously, but it gets weirder.
Weirder how?
He gets in his car, turns on the radio, and hears this commercial.
Okay.
But it's not just any commercial, right? It's like this super spooky, ominous voice talking about a curse, and Rampage is convinced it's the devil trying to reach him.
Hold on, seriously. Rampage Jackson, the dude who fights for a living, was freaked out by a radio ad.
You gotta understand, this dream shook him up. He was actually too scared to even turn on the radio for weeks after that. Says it messed him up.
That's wild. You never really know what's going on in someone's head, even a guy like Rampage.
Totally. And this wasn't just him brushing it off like, oh, weird dream, moving on. He really dove into it.
Like he took it seriously.
Oh, yeah. He talked about how this whole experience, combined with some things his son was going through at the time, led him to this full-blown spiritual awakening. He even describes it as being born again.
Wow. And we see this actually play out in his fighting, right? Doesn't he try fasting before the Wanderlei Silva rematch?
Exactly. He was so committed to his newfound faith, he actually did a 3 or 4 day fast before the fight. Thought it would bring him closer to God.
Wait, hold up. He fasted before a championship fight. I mean, more power to him, but...
Yeah, not the best strategy from a purely athletic perspective. Spoiler alert. It didn't work out so well. He lost that fight.
Probably should have eaten something. But I respect the commitment, you know.
Totally. It just goes to show how deeply this transformation impacted him, how much our personal beliefs influence our actions, even in high-stakes situations like that.
No doubt. And speaking of things that impact your well-being, didn't Rampage have some strong opinions on the whole health and wellness thing too?
Absolutely. He gets into this whole thing about being misdiagnosed with hypothyroidism and how that experience forced him to really educate himself on diet and lifestyle.
Interesting. What'd he say?
He gets super passionate about cutting out processed foods, embracing real whole foods. You know, the kind of stuff we hear a lot about these days. But coming from Rampage, it hits different.
Right. It's not just some guru telling you to eat your vegetables. This is Rampage Jackson, the dude who once threw a guy through a table talking about the benefits of a balanced diet.
Exactly. And he's got stories to back it up. He talks about his trainer, stays ripped year-round, eats basically meat and vegetables, that's it. Then there's that wild story about his trip to Colombia for some experimental stem cell therapy.
What happened in Colombia?
He's telling Rogan how he's eating whatever he wants down there, but he's still losing weight. And it dawns on him. It's because the food in Colombia is just naturally healthier.
Makes you think about what we're putting in our bodies here.
Right. And Rampage doesn't hold back. He goes in on the sugar industry, influencing scientists, doctors overprescribing medication, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
He's seen firsthand how money often comes before people's well-being, especially here in the U.S., you know?
It's that whole distrust of authority thing again, right? Which kind of bleeds into his views on COVID, doesn't it?
100%. He's very open about using ivermectin with a doctor's prescription, he makes sure to mention. And he doesn't hold back on his criticism of the media and how the whole pandemic was handled. Now, look, we're not here to endorse any particular treatment.
Of course not.
But it's important to understand where he's coming from. This is a guy who grew up in Memphis, selling drugs at 8 years old, dealing with the law.
Tough upbringing.
No kidding. It shaped his whole worldview. So when he's skeptical of the media, of Big Pharma, it's not coming from nowhere.
Right. It all ties together. His distrust of authority, the conspiracy theories, it's all connected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's be real. This is Rampage we're talking about. It can't all be serious, right? The guy's hilarious. And when he starts talking about life after fighting, that's where things get really entertaining.
So we've gone deep on Rampage's spirituality, his healthy living kick. But this is still the same dude who headbutted that door on The Ultimate Fighter, right? What's life been like for him outside the octagon?
Oh, man. That door incident. Legendary Rampage. But honestly, it kind of sums up the whole transition thing for him. You know, he's trying to channel that same intensity into, well, life.
Not always easy, I bet.
Definitely not. Though he can laugh about it now, the door thing, which I think says a lot.
Self-awareness is key.
For sure. But yeah, he's got the podcast now, which seems like a good fit.
Totally. Just be himself, tell his stories.
Yeah. Exactly. No filter, hilarious. You never know what he'll say next. 1 minute, it's this wild story about the Yakuza.
Don't leave me hanging. What's the Yakuza story?
Okay, so he's telling Rogan about this time he meets this Yakuza member, right? And the guy's missing a finger.
Okay.
And somehow this leads to Rampage gifting his son that samurai helmet. It's a whole thing. You got to hear him tell it.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Gotta love it.
Right. But then, just like that, he gets serious.
Yeah.
Talks about how much he regrets missing that Rashad Evans fight because he was filming the A-Team.
The movie that almost was.
He was bummed about that, you could tell. And it makes you realize, even for a guy like Rampage, it's not all wins. There's regrets, missed opportunities.
No, it's human.
Totally. He achieved incredible things, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. And that's relatable.
Absolutely. So fighting's in the rearview mirror, but you can tell he's still got that competitive fire.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
He even talks about wanting to box Rashad, maybe fight Fedor again.
Come back at age. Was he like 50?
Something like that.
Bold move.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. He even admits he's not the same Rampage who dominated back in Pride. Talking about being misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
How different things were back then.
How so?
Well, for one, he straight up says Pride didn't even test for steroids. Which, puts things in perspective.
Wow. Different era. But even now, he seems genuinely pumped about mentoring younger fighters, especially this AJ McKee. Says the kid's the real deal.
Definitely sees something special in him. Though he's frustrated that Bellator doesn't get the same respect as the UFC. Thinks McKee deserves more recognition.
That's a whole other conversation. Does true talent always get the spotlight? I don't know.
Good question. And, it applies to Rampage's own journey, too. He talks about his childhood in Memphis, selling drugs at 8 years old, ending up in jail.
Heavy stuff.
No doubt. And it clearly shaped him, his distrust of authority, the conspiracy theories. It all comes from somewhere.
It's like this thread running through his whole life. 1 minute he's joking about a spooky radio ad after a dream about God. The next he's dissecting the pandemic.
That's Rampage, man. Unpredictable, but always entertaining.
So after this wild ride of an interview, what's the takeaway? What can we learn from a guy like Rampage Jackson?
I think it's about embracing the unexpected. Life's going to throw curveballs. You'll have wins. You'll have regrets. But it's about learning from it all, being genuine, and not being afraid to speak your truth, even if it ruffles some feathers.
Which Rampage does. A lot.
No doubt. He definitely leaves you with a lot to think about.
He does. So listeners, here's something to ponder. If you had the chance to chase your dreams, but it meant taking a risk, going against the grain, would you do it? It's something Rampage had to ask himself, and now we're asking you. This deep dive into Rampage's world has been a whirlwind, that's for sure. Full of laughs, insights, maybe a few head-scratchers along the way. But one thing's for sure. Quinton Rampage Jackson is one of a kind. His story's far from over, and we'll be watching to see what he does next.